and welcome to episode 7 of the Next Goal Wins podcast. On this week's podcast, we are joined by none other than Manchester United's all-time leading appearance maker, Ryan Giggs. We hope you enjoy the podcast and thank you for listening.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Next Goal Wins podcast, and we've got a very exciting guest this week. How are you guys, first of all?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, all good over here. Yeah, it's an exciting one this week. We've obviously got a big guest in Ryan Giggs. How are you doing, Ryan?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. You okay?
Yep. Not bad. If we go back to the start of your career, just to get started, everyone knows you began your career in the youth setup at Man United. What was it like for a lad, growing up in the Salford area to get the opportunity to join such an iconic club?
Yeah, growing up as a United fan, obviously, it was exciting. I think I was lucky in the fact that I played for Salford Boys, and Salford Boys played all their games literally 50 yards away from the cliff. So I was aware of the cliff. I was aware of, the interest of United from an early age. But yeah, it was great. The cliff was an amazing place. Obviously, so much history. Obviously, we've moved onto bigger facilities in Carrington, but Cliff had that history, and it was a real closeness. So when you did come, whether it be in the school holidays at school, you were literally eating next to your heroes. So it was an amazing time, and it was a time that set you up and set the foundations for your career.
How good a learning environment was the Cliff, with the fact that you say you were eating next to your heroes? You maybe sometimes got to see them train from time to time, I assume, because the venue's so small. Did that make it a very good learning environment for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even if we go back to when I was a schoolboy, we used to go down Tuesday, Thursday nights to the Cliff in the indoor facility, and Archie Knox, who was then the assistant manager, and now and again Sir Alex Ferguson would come down. So it was, something that you wouldn't experience now. And then, like I say, you would try and keep yourself to yourself because you were young, and obviously you're not approaching the first team players, the likes of Brian Robson, Mark Hughes, but you were literally, queuing up with your heroes, like I say. So it was a great learning curve. It stood me in good stead for when I did get into the first team, because I was never sort of starstruck or overawed because of the environment that I was used to.
Quite unique.
Yeah, so you're coached by my granddad, Eric Harrison, during your time at United. How much of a lasting influence did he have on you at the time and then going through your career?
No, huge. I think, I was in the A team and the youth team at quite an early age, 14, 15. And Eric was, first of all his teams played amazing football, but, as it has been well documented, Eric was tough, and he would test you both on and off the pitch. So he was really preparing you for first team football, and that is the job of the youth team coach, really, to prepare you for what is to come. Like I say, both football wise and mentally. So going into that environment, you're ready, and we certainly were because of Eric. And it was hard sometimes. Some of the runs that Eric would give us, it would take you completely out of your comfort zone. And also little things like, I'll give you a few examples. It was snowing once, and we just thought, we'll just be in the gym. So he would come down, he'd come down on this occasion and just went, right, okay, lads, get in your cars, because we used to train over at Littleton Road, get in your cars, we're training over to Littleton Road, and we're all looking at each other going, it's thick with snow. So we go over to Littleton Road, because you didn't even question it. Go over to Littleton Road, you get out on the pitch, we're freezing, and he gets out a rugby ball. And we actually played rugby. Wow. Now, some of the guys that I grew up, I was lucky. My dad was a rugby player. I grew up in a rugby environment, so I was fine. But some of the lads had never played rugby in their life. And we played rugby for like half an hour, and the lads are not knowing the rules. They're throwing it forward like an American football. But it was just, he just kept you on your toes all the time. Another example was when I think I was 15, I was playing in the A-team. And we were playing against Marine, which was a men's team, and a men's team in Liverpool. So as you can imagine, Man United going to Marine, full of like Everton, Liverpool fans. And I played centre forward, and I was playing against this man, literally, I was 15, I think he was like a 30-year-old man. And the goalkeeper, Ian Wilkinson, just kept hitting the ball right on top of this centre half. And I just turned round and I said to Wilco, just hit it a little bit flatter, don't keep hitting it so high, because the centre half's just going right away through me, just headbutting the back of my head. And he said, no, Eric's told me to just keep hitting it on top of you. And I'm like, and that was a test. That was a test to see if I could handle it. And there's nothing I could do about it. And I just had to just come through it, really, and try and not get an elbow in the back of the head. But it was little things like that where he would really push you and try and take you out of your comfort zone.
Did it ever get to the stage where you were able to face every challenge that he almost put up to you? Or did he just come up with constant new challenges to keep trying to bring you to the next level and the next level?
Well, I think he never wanted you to get comfortable, but there was a balance. There was a balance. I've just give you a few examples there, but when you played well, or an occasion, sometimes even when you're not playing well and you needed an arm around you, he could do that as well. So... But you never got comfortable. You never felt that you'd made it, and he never allowed that. And to be fair, your teammates would never allow that. There was another occasion which was quite a funny story where I actually signed. You can sign professional forms when you're 17. So I'm in the manager's office, Sir Alex Ferguson's office. I signed my professional forms. And I never liked college. We used to go to college on Thursday, and I never liked it. So I said to the manager, I said to the gaffer, do I still have to go to college? And he went, no, you're a professional now. You can do whatever you want. So I'm, right, great. So the next Thursday, I just come to training. I was training with the first team then. I trained with the first team, and I'm queuing up after training. Obviously, the youth team had trained, or the A team had trained at Littleton Road. I'm queuing up for dinner. I'd have a shower, got changed, and Eric comes straight for me. The college had rang him and said, listen, Ryan's not been in today. And he comes straight. I was queuing up. I'd actually had my tray of food. He went, what are you doing here? I went, what do you mean? He says, it's Thursday, you got college. I went, no, and I said it like quite cocky. I said, no, it's okay, Eric. The manager said I don't need to go to college anymore. And he went, well, the manager's effing wrong. Get yourself on that 52 bus and get yourself to college. And I put down my food, and I had to get the 52 back to college. And obviously, when I walked in the classroom, all the lads are going, "What are you doing here?" I says, "Oh, Eric's, he's just giving me a bit of a telling off, and I've had to come to college, so I had to go to college for the rest of the year."
Fantastic.
So you talk about, obviously you just touched on it being a tough experience. Were there any players that you played with in the youth setup that you were surprised didn't quite make it to the same level as some of the other lads did?
At 14, 15, we had a player who was my age, Raphael Burke, who was the best player in the UK. When you would watch him, you would go, oh no, have I got to get to that level? That is, he was going past players like they weren't there. And he was physically stronger than everyone else. He was so skillful, he could do every trick. He would be like, if I could compare him, he would be like Cristiano Ronaldo, in the way that he played and the way that he could beat players with pace, or he had every trick in the book. And then we obviously, he didn't really grow, he didn't enjoy the experience. Some of the things that I've just talked about, he never really enjoyed that side of it, and he just slowly faded away. And he'll admit to himself that he didn't work hard enough, and he just didn't have what it takes. And he was a great lad. He was such a talent. So there were players who you would fully expect at 14, 15 to go on and make it, and they just didn't. And then there's the opposite as well. You know, players who didn't stand out at that time, who just had something in them that in the end they made themselves. They pushed themselves to be professional footballers.
Do you think that's down to the do you think that's down to the mental side of the game?
Yeah, definitely. Because Raphael had more skill than me, more skill than any player at that age, 14, 15. He just didn't have that something that you needed to push yourself. And you know, there was players that I played with who didn't have half the skill that Raf had, but just had that mental stability, that mental strength, and would take themselves out of the comfort zone and would just get everything possible out of their game. And went on to make it.
How hard was it to make them, sacrifices, like not going out with your mates or not doing stuff that usual teenagers did? How hard was it to do, even though you knew you had to do it?
I mean, it was hard. I mean, I remember I would still go to the youth club on a Friday night, and youth club would finish at I remember that. I would go to a youth club where my friends from my Sunday league team went. So it wasn't where I lived, actually. I had to get 2 buses there. So about 9:30, I had a decision to make. This was Friday night. Do I get the bus? The last bus was 10 o'clock. Do I get the last bus, or do I spend an extra hour with them and then end up running home? And it was about 7 or 8 miles. And it wasn't easy. Some days I'd just get the bus. Other times we would be having a good time, and I'd think, no, I'm having a good time here, but knowing that I would miss the last bus and I'd have to run home. So in itself, that was like taking you out of your comfort zone, but it's not easy because you're missing out on, mates 18th, mates 21st, leaving parties at school. So it's not easy, but you have to do it. And, I give you a couple of examples there where I would stay out a little bit longer, but that was very rare. Normally, I'd get myself on the bus and get ready for the game the next day.
Yeah, you were the first out of the obviously so-called class of '92 to make the first team debut. How did you use that experience to guide and sort of give advice to the other boys coming through?
Well, I was dipping in and out of, so I would play for the first team, but also, so when we won the Youth Cup, I'd already played quite a number of games for the first team, but I would come back and train and play in the youth team. So it wasn't as if I would give, likes of Scholes or Nev or Bex or Butty advice. I think it was more talking to them and, what was it like? Travel down to London, you played Tottenham, what was the hotels like? Where did you stay? But the hotels are amazing. What was White Hart Lane like? So I think it was more speaking to them about my experiences and them thinking, right, I want a bit of that. And also, seeing there was possible for a lad to come through the youth team and get into the first team. So rather than giving them an advice, I think, the lads would say themselves that you were seeing one of your teammates who you played with in the youth team now cement or be playing regular in the first team, and it sort of give them the that extra push that, we can do it. If we work hard enough, we can also get in the first team as well.
Yeah, so your first goal for the club came in the Manchester derby. What was it like playing in them games against City?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty relaxed sort of person. I never really got nervous. I never really got above my station. So it looking back now, I was just young, and I think I probably got nervous on more occasions when I was older, when you realise what's at stake. I think back then, even though it's a huge game, you're at Old Trafford, you're making your full debut against, your local derbies. Obviously, I'd played against the youth cup. I played against City in the youth team, played against Liverpool in the youth team. So I was used to that rivalry. All it was you're just stepping up in standard and you're now in the first team. And there's probably 40,000 more people. But at that age, I wasn't that sort of thinking about that. I just went out and played. And I think Sir Alex had a lot to do with that, where, okay, there's a big crowd, you're at Old Trafford, but all I want you to do is do what you've been doing in the youth team. That's why you're here. And that sort of calmed me down and relaxed me, if there was any nerves anyway.
Was there any senior players in the first team when you first moved up that sort of helped you settle in quite quickly?
Oh, there was loads. I was so lucky. I had absolute brilliant characters and leaders within that team. Brian Robson, Steve Bruce, Brian McClare. I'd obviously seen Lee Sharp break through the first team and play for a couple of years and do so well. So that I think I always say that these sort of players never, when I was playing well, they just left me to it. When the manager had a pop at me or I wasn't playing so well, that's when you need help from the older players, the experienced players, because they've been through it. When you lose a game and you're 18, 19, or you miss an open goal or you miss a great chance, you literally think it's the end of the world. You think the manager's never going to pick me again. I should have scored, we'd have won the game. So you think it's the end of the world. And, I remember on numerous occasions me sat on the coach and thinking that. And the likes of Steve Bruce would come and sit next to me and go, don't worry about it. You've got another game next week. You'll come back. Don't listen to him. It'd be that sort of thing. And them little words that they just give you so much more confidence and make you realise that it's not the end of the world. That actually, they've been through that and they've come through it. So I was really lucky that I had a changing room that was just full of players who were willing to help you. So I took that later on in my career and, helped as many young players as I could.
Yeah, we touched on, obviously, the rivalry with City then. I'm actually quite interested to see, from your point of view, obviously playing in them, to rank these three teams that you played against in terms of which you thought was the biggest rivalry to be involved with. We've got City, Liverpool and Leeds United. How would you rank them in terms of the rivalries?
Well, when we got into the first team, in the early 90s, 100%, for me, it would be Liverpool, Leeds, City. Liverpool were the ones to beat because it was, we hadn't won the league. They were a million miles in front of us, and I grew up with them winning everything. And then Leeds, they obviously pipped up my first full season. They pipped us to win the league, so that was huge as well. And then we throw in Eric Cantona, obviously leaving Leeds and then going back. Them few years that we would go back to Ellen Road, it was ferocious. It was serious atmospheres. And City, obviously, they weren't at the level of them two teams in regards to the quality that they had. But, of course, it's a local derby. I grew up as a United fan. Like I said before, I played against City in the youth team. Now, it's slightly different now. Liverpool, I would always say, were the biggest rivals for me. But now, obviously, City have overtaken Leeds because of where Leeds went and now City are. But in the early days, it was definitely in that order for me.
Yeah, in a way, I know it sounds bad, obviously, coming from a United, obviously you're a United legend, a United fan. Would you like to see Leeds back in the Premier League, to see them sort of games play out again?
Yeah, I don't have to go and play at Ellen Road anymore, so I would definitely, 100%, because even though there was a real dislike, and probably bigger dislike for Leeds than City and Liverpool. There's a genuine dislike between the fans and obviously the atmospheres. With Liverpool, it was a really competitive environment, and Anfield was and still probably is the toughest place that I've had to go. But Ellen Road was ferocious. It was sometimes you didn't feel safe, and it was a different twist. And when we would walk into Ellen Road, especially with Eric, I would be like, "Go on, Eric, you go first. I'll be 20 yards behind you," and you were literally walking through the fans, and it was dangerous. And even my mates who would go and watch the game, they would rank Leeds as like, sometimes, don't know if I fancy going there because it is that crazy. So I would love to see Leeds back in the Premier League, because they are a big club and the history that we have got with them, and it would be an amazing 2 games.
Yeah, so as we move on the years now, what was it like as more of your youth teammates? What was it like when they started coming through, as Gary Neville and Phil Neville started coming through into the first team? What was that like?
Oh, it was brilliant for me. Obviously I was quite close to Sharpie and I was quite close to Paul Ince. But, I've known these lads since I was 13. So they were then and they are now mates, not teammates, but proper mates. So to have them coming through at the same age, and you just naturally... sit next to each other, got the same interests. So back then, we would all be sat together on the coach, and gradually it would be, maybe me and Nicky first, and then, Scholesy would come. No, Scholesy was the last probably. Then it would be Nev, and then Bex was on loan a few times, but then all of a sudden, there was the 5 of us. And also, you had the likes of Ben Thornley, who early on would be involved in that, and then a couple of years later would be Phil. But yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant because you don't get that. You don't get mates coming through very often, in a group, and they're not only teammates, they're actual mates.
Do you feel like that kind of bond contributed to success? And that kind of bond within the team? Yeah, and I think also training. We go back to Eric. Eric was quite happy on that Friday afternoon in that little 5-a-side game that we had, kicking lumps out of each other. And he would very often he wouldn't blow his whistle, and there would be ridiculous tackles going in. And that then got taken into the first team, where, the likes of Brian Robson coming to the end, Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, taking it easy in training, and all of a sudden you've got these kids coming through who are mates, but still kicking lumps out of each other. And, wanting to win every day in training and having that edge. And it didn't matter who you were. I would be playing the ball and Scholesy would come in with a late tackle, and I would be like, okay, next time you get the ball, right, okay, is it like that? And I would be smashing Scholesy, and then Nicky would get involved, and it would I think it definitely helped the competitiveness and the hunger, and it also had an effect. I always say, when a young player comes through, it has an effect on the older experienced players, because then they have to step up, because otherwise they'll get left for dead in training.
Yeah, so as a group of mates, you experienced a lot of success, and I think you could say it peaked maybe at the 99 treble winning season. What was it like the night after the night in Barcelona, when you were all together and you realised that you'd just won the Champions League with, like you say, a group of mates?
Yeah, it was amazing, because back then, not only we were mates, but our families would go to nearly every away European game. So my mum would go, Gary's mum and dad would go, Nicky's mum and dad would go, and Bex's mum and dad would go, and all the families were mates. So after that, obviously we're celebrating. It was an amazing achievement, but you can't wait after the dressing room. You're doing all your interviews. You can't wait to get to see your family and your friends and also share it together. And that is obviously special. They're the special moments that you get because they've been on that journey with you as well. And like I say, they would come for 2-day trips for, to Milan, to Munich. They would be a part of it. They would be a part of, and you would often see them the day before the game at the hotel, or they would come over and say hello. So it was a huge part of it. Not only us as friends, but us as a group of a family.
Yeah, we're talking obviously of the successes of 1999. What was it like at the tail end of that season? Obviously, you played so many games. Was it tough mentally and obviously physically to get through them last games, or did adrenaline sort of push you through the finals and the final games? Yeah,
I think adrenaline. I mean, you forget what happened, and obviously it's just past the anniversary 21, and you go into more detail. I didn't play for 5 weeks before I got injured in the semi-final when I scored the goal. I didn't play for another 4 or 5 weeks. Jesper didn't play for 3 weeks before the Champions League final. Obviously, Nicky, because of Paul and Roy suspension, he didn't play. In the FA Cup final, he always says, I wanted to play in that FA Cup final. So it was you forget what happened, but it was a real team effort. It was a real squad effort. And if you weren't playing, normally you would have the little bit of the you would, you'd still support the team, but there would be a bit of disappointment. That didn't happen. You knew you were going to get your games. And whoever was playing, even if it was in your position, you supported them and you wished them well and you would help them. And yeah, it was a real team effort, and it was adrenaline, and it was momentum, and obviously the manager managed it really well because there was a lot of things that he had to juggle.
Yeah, obviously throughout your career you've played with many unbelievable players. Who, in your opinion, do you think is the best player that you've played with?
The best player I've played with is Ronaldo. He's the best player that but he's the best player I've played with. But he's gone on, and obviously he did amazing things at United. But then he's gone on to Real Madrid. He's gone on to Juventus. The best player I've seen at United consistently was Scholesy, because when I was sort of at my peak, or when I was at United, I felt that I could do more. More or less everything that any other player could do. I'm talking about in training. With Scholesy, it was onto a different level. It was, if he was in the possession team, that team would keep the ball. If he was small-sided games, the team that he was on, they would more often than not win the game because he was on the team and he would dictate the game. So he was the best player at United, but overall, for what he's gone on and achieved, and will be remembered as one of the best ever, is Ronaldo.
So what about players you've played against? I think a game that comes to mind, which probably you might have enjoyed playing in it, but probably not because it was a loss, is the Champions League final against Barcelona, when obviously that great Guardiola team. Would you put Messi up there as one of the best players you've played against?
Oh, yeah. Messi's, there's a few players who, you can have a plan, you can have or teams, you can have a plan. Messi can just rip that plan completely. He can mess that, he can rip that plan apart because he can do anything. He can drop into the little pockets, he can, especially when he comes central. When he comes more central, when we beat him in the semi-final to get to 2008 final, he was right wing and he was still unbelievable. But Patrice Evra did an unbelievable job in the semi-final, both semi-finals, to keep him quiet. Then when he moved centrally, you couldn't defend it. You couldn't defend it because he could go both ways. He could drop into them little pockets in behind the midfield. Centre halves didn't necessarily want to go on top of him because he could run in behind as well. So he was the player who, what him and Cristiano are doing now is something we might never see ever again, with the goals that they're scoring and the trophies that they're winning, both individual and as a team.
So we talked about the best player you've played with. Which player do you think you had the best, connection with on the pitch? Like you thought, I can find him without even looking up.
There was a few really. A few that I had to work at, but few that just come naturally. Scholes, Becks, didn't even need to shout. I knew when they were going to play me the ball, and they knew where I was running. And that was just, I don't know if it was from knowing each other for so long, and obviously the ability that they both had. So that in players finding me, it was them two. In me finding players and also players finding me, Eric, that was just something that just come straight away. I always felt comfortable playing with Eric and know that if I made a run, he would find me. And when I was in a position to cross the ball, I knew where he was going to be. One that was an interesting one, which I really did have, and it was towards the end of my career, that didn't happen straight away, was Robin van Persie. But afterwards, once I knew his runs, he was brilliant to play with. Because he ran early and he was an intelligent player. And once I knew where he was running, and that was something that we discussed really between ourselves, and something that Sir Alex brought up, and he actually watched us make a video of Robin's runs and saying, listen, we're not finding him. And I'm watching him going, oh, right, yeah. So it was a case of he ran that early that you didn't have time to look. So you controlled the ball and just play the ball in the space, and he was there.
Yeah.
So there was different players. Some just come naturally. Some you had to work on a little bit more.
Yeah, obviously we've talked about rivalries with City, Liverpool and Leeds. You were part of the United team which had such a fierce rivalry in the early 2000s with that great Arsenal team. What were the battles like, down at Highbury and at Old Trafford? What was it like to be a part of them games?
No, it was a battle. It was more than sort of football. I say it was more than football because you had to mentally prepare for it, as well as playing a game of football. And the reason why is because they were so good. They were so good and they were so like us. Such a good footballing team, had a good manager, and were tough as well. Could mix it. So they all just seemed to be huge hype building up to the game. And if we were playing them on a Sunday, Monday morning it would start. Whether it be Wenger or Sir Alex saying something or one of the players. And there was always something on the game. We were both going for leagues at that time. So it was huge battles, both physically, mentally, technically. And you knew you had to be on your game. Personally, you knew you had to play well. So they were brilliant battles. And, sometimes we got the better of them. Sometimes they got the better of us. So you could never really predict who was going to get the better because it was such good teams.
Yeah, obviously United are famous for dominating under Sir Alex. How hard was it as a team, to watch that Arsenal team go unbeaten for a full season? Was it like, oh, we should have done that, we wanted to that? Was it tough to take for them to go the whole season unbeaten?
Yeah, I think it was tough to take. But it's an unbelievable achievement, and they had a lot of luck. We should have beat them. Rude. I think it was the first time Rude had missed a penalty for us, so they'd had that little bit of luck, which you need, which every successful team has. I think, you were gutted that they did it, but also you recognising it's an unbelievable achievement, and especially, when you finish and you're a lot more chilled. Whereas, when I was playing then, you were probably thinking every week, I hope they get beat, please get beat. But now you're looking back, you're a little bit more philosophical, and you're a little bit more relaxed about it, and you hold your hands up that it was a brilliant achievement.
Yeah, so in 2008 you won the Champions League again. Comparing both teams that you won the Champions League with, in your opinion, which would you say was the better team? So if they came up against each other, who do you think could win?
I'm gonna. Do you know what? It's so tough. I'm gonna slightly contradict myself here. I always say 1919 was the best because achieved the treble. It's never been done. That is an amazing achievement. But the 2018 was more of a sort of continental team, more of a European world sort of feel about it. Edwin had been at Ajax. Obviously, Patrice had been at clubs. We had Tevez, we had Ronaldo, we had Owen Hargreaves, who'd been obviously from Bayern. And we had players who were the best in the world at their position. The two centre-halves, the goalkeeper, the left-back. Rooney, Tevez, Ronaldo, all players who were world class. Who were, would walk into any team. Now, but the 99 team achieved the treble, and we also had Schmeichel, best goalkeeper ever for United. Jaap Stam, the centre half who I would always pick first. Roy Keane, best captain I ever played with, one of the best players I've ever played with. And then obviously you look at the likes of Becks and Yorkie and Coley and the connection that they had, and also the squad. So it's a real difficult one. I always say that the 99 team is the best, but I wouldn't have a strong argument with anyone who said that the 2008 team was the better one.
What was it like coming up against these sort of, as you say, world-class players in training? What was it like, say, going into training and having to face up day in, day out against the likes of Jaap Stam and Roy Keane? Did that obviously make you better as a player, playing with them every day?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I for me, coming through, I think when I come through, I always trained well. I always wanted to give 100%. And, I was coming up against players like Pally, like Steve Bruce, like Brian Robson, who were coming towards the end and, sometimes take it easy in training. They'd done all their training when they were younger. They were just preparing for that Saturday, and they would produce on that Saturday. I think I touched on it, young players coming through, and that class of 92 coming through perhaps made it more competitive. And also you get a feel of that when the likes of Rio Ferdinand and other players who would come to the club and go, wow, you guys train at 100 miles an hour, and they're not used to it. They weren't used to it, and it would take a bit of time to get used to, and they would either sink or swim. So they would either have to train to that, because you'd look stupid otherwise. When I first come into the team, you would have players who would stand out who weren't doing so well, but they produce on the Saturday. I think as lads get more professional, and the facilities are better and the pitches are better, training got better and better, and in the end you had to train well to get in the team. So it definitely improved you as a player. And I always say, for me, Saturday was relatively easy because I'm not going to come up against a better fullback than Gary Neville. I'm playing against Nev every day in training, England right back, and I've got to get the better of him. So come Saturday, I'm not going to play against a better player than him.
Yeah, obviously it's unheard of nowadays for a player to play for one club for his whole career, and it's even stranger for 23 of them years to be with the same manager. What was Sir Alex like as a manager? I know you could probably talk about this for hours, but in a quick, if you had to sum it up quickly, what is he like as a manager?
Well, he ticked every box. You know, obviously I'm a manager now, and he ticked every box in regards to, and it's not easy, but obviously he had the experience, he had the desire. His big thing was working hard. Tactically, he was very good. He evolved. So when I first come into the team, there would be himself and Archie Knox, then Brian Kidd. When he finished, there would perhaps be 15 staff on the pitch. And he embraced that. Sports science, analysis, masseurs, all these things he embraced. And, that's not easy to do if you've had a way of winning and you want to stick with it. So he was old school in his discipline and his tradition and his history, but also he evolved when the game evolved. So, and he wasn't afraid to delegate. So, he would delegate training. He would set the tone. He would tell us what we're working on that week. But then he would let the coaches do it. He would let the sports science prepare us pre-season. And he would listen to the stats. So he ticked every box, and he was the best man manager. He knew when to be tough with you, when to put an arm around you. And again, that's not easy either. If you're not playing well and, and you've got 25 other players to look after, and to put their arm around him and try and... You always wanted to play for him. I had loads of falling outs with him. Loads. And he was particularly harsh on the likes of myself, Nicky, Scholesy, Bex. But I always wanted to play for him. Always. Even if we hadn't spoke for a week. Come that, I wanted to win for him. So, yeah, he ticked every box when it comes to being a manager.
Do you think he came down quite hard on the lads, obviously you just said, to sort of prove a point to players coming into the club, like saying, even these have been here so long, you can't get comfortable, you've got to earn your place at all times?
He definitely, he did that with me towards the end. I remember him, I was 30, what would I have been? I was 37, 38, and he went after me, pre-season training, I'll never forget it, we're in New Jersey, training at the New York Giants training ground, and he pulled in training, and there'd been a night out and all the lads had gone out and something had happened, and he held me responsible. I had nothing to do with what happened, but he held me responsible because I was the oldest. It was me and Edwin, but he went for me for that reason, and he pulled me after, and I was like, and he went for me big, and I was like, that was out of order. And he pulled me afterwards and went, I went for you there because they can't think that they can get away with it, and they can't think that if I ever go at you, then no one's safe. So he definitely did it later on in my career. Early on in my career, it was more, I'd set a standard. If I dropped below that standard, he would be onto me. And that was the same with Scholesy and Bex, because he knew us for so long. If we didn't produce, or if we weren't working hard enough, he would be onto us.
Yeah, obviously, at what point during your career did you start to prepare for a coaching route? Like, when did you start doing your badges? Was it quite near the end, or was it something you thought about quite early on?
No, I mean, it was, I was 29. I was 29 when I started, 29, 30. So there was myself, Gary, Roy Keane, Nicky Butt, Ollie as well. So we were doing our B licence, and we were doing it at Carrington. So a coach would come in, and we would do it at Carrington because obviously we were still playing. So it was then where I wouldn't say I was starting thinking about coaching, but it was much easier because we were doing it as a group. We could bounce ideas off each other. We could help each other. So that's when we started. Then about 34, 35, I did my A licence, and then I did my pro licence when I was still playing. So I did my pro licence in not my last year, the year before. So it was a case of just preparing yourself whenever it came. And yeah, that's what we decided to do.
How did the initial first steps come about when you got into coaching? Obviously, you ended up interim manager you ended up assistant manager, then interim manager. How did that all come about?
Well, the first, so I was sort of a coaching role with David Moyes. That I was actually on my pro licence. So I was in Turkey. I was at the Under-20s World Cup, and I got a phone call off David Moyes asking me to come on board with a coaching role. I'm sure Sir Alex had something to do with it. As sort of a step for me as well as playing. And I actually said to David Moyes, I says, can I think about it? And the reason why is because I wanted to concentrate on myself, as I thought it might be my last season. I wanted to concentrate on my playing career. And I thought, will it hinder? But in the end, I spoke to Sir Alex, spoke to a few other people, and I thought, I'll do it because I can play and train, obviously, but also get the inside track on how you prepare for training, for games. And it's a good opportunity, and an opportunity that I can't turn down. In the end, I didn't do one. I was still playing, and it was too difficult. It was too hard. Preparing yourself, especially at 39, 40, for training, for games, and to do the both, to stay late for meetings, it was too hard, and I struggled. And after about 5 or 6 months, I stopped going to the meetings before for training because they were about an hour long. I was having to get in an hour earlier, and it was affecting my football, so I come away from it. And then obviously David left, and I took over in them 4 games. Took over in the 4 games. Obviously, and then Louis got announced after my first game. And in regards with Louis, he wanted to meet me. And I had a decision to make. Do I go elsewhere? Do I maybe play another year? I could have probably played another year, maybe 2, because I had no injuries. I was still fit. But I was thinking, no, if I'm going to be a coach, I need to start now. So I flew over to Holland to meet Louis. We spoke. We had similar sort of ideas on the players within the squad. And he said, I want you to be my assistant. So that's how I got to be assistant.
Yeah, so we've come away from your time at United. You achieved 64 caps for Wales, and you were part of some great Welsh teams, which included the likes of Gary Speed, John Hartson, Robbie Savage. Were you shocked that you didn't make it to a major tournament, considering the quality that you had within your team?
Yeah, I mean, we got close twice. So we got close in the early 2000s when Mark Hughes was manager. We had a 2-legged game to get to the Euros in 2004 against Russia. Drew the first game away from home, and then they beat us. And the reason they beat us, we played with the same team. They tweaked it a little bit. And that was the story, really. We never had the strength in depth. My first campaign, World Cup 94, we should have got there then. We had a really good team, and we were really a penalty away from going. We had an opportunity to score a penalty, we missed it, and we didn't go through because of that. But that team was just coming towards the end. Yeah, Neville Southall, Kevin Ratcliffe, Mark Hughes, Ian Rush, Dean Saunders. Really good team. But Mark Hughes had to play midfield. It was that sort of... Gary Speed had to play left back. It was about getting the best players on the pitch but not necessarily in their best positions because, we didn't have a left back, but we had Gary Speed who could play there. Didn't have a midfield, so we had to play Mark Hughes there as a centre forward. You couldn't put a midfielder there and leave Mark Hughes on the bench at that time because it was Ian Rush and Dean Saunders up front. They couldn't play any other position really. So it was lots of chopping and changing, and then it was 10 years in between that, and in between that, them great players retired, and we didn't have a great team in them years, and especially that strength in depth.
So you touched on Mark Hughes then. What was it like, you grew up watching him at United and then played with him at United. What was it like then for him to become the international coach then? What was the relationship like with him?
No, it was good. I mean, obviously he'd left United by then. He'd gone and played other teams. But no, it was good because, when Sparky took over, the professionalism and the organisation and it was tough for me because he wasn't great. Wasn't what I was used to at United. And then Sparky took over and he took it on to the next level. Obviously, he'd been part of that process. He'd been frustrated. And he took it on to the next level and he enjoyed it. And he had really good people around him. He had Mark Bowen, Eddie Niedzwiecki, who was the coaches. So he had really good people around him. And obviously Sparky was a big manager for working hard, making sure you're organised. And, he'd been Barcelona, he'd been Man United, he'd been Bayern Munich, Chelsea. He'd been at clubs where he had a lot of experience and played under a lot of great managers.
Yeah, and obviously now you've stepped up into that role, the international manager. How does it differ, feelings-wise, from playing for your country compared to managing your country?
Oh, yeah, it's completely different. I mean, as a player, I touched on it before, I was pretty relaxed. So you train, you get up, you have breakfast, you train, you prepare for training, you train, then you do your stretches, then you go lie down. It's boring. International football, you just sat in a hotel room for 10 days, 11 days. Train, eat, sleep. As a manager, you're planning that training session. So you have an earlier breakfast because you want to know about the injuries of the medical department, and then you can plan training because you know the players that you've got. Then obviously you do training, then you evaluate training, you get ready to prepare for the meeting that night because there's lots of meetings because you don't get time on the grass. So it's constant. And from when you get up to when you go to sleep, you don't stop. Together with media, commercial department, sponsors. Yeah, there's a lot of people pulling you from pillar to post. So it's completely different. And also, the feeling is completely different because you're in charge of a nation, you're in charge of the staff, you're in charge of the media, the players, the fans. So rather than just being you're a part of a team, but looking after yourself, you have to look after so many more people. And you do a lot more thinking, your mind never stops. Whereas in football, I trained, then I could switch off and relax.
Yeah, obviously you've qualified for the Euros, which are meant to take place this year, but have been moved to next year. Do you feel in a way that's a sort of blessing in disguise, considering you've got such a young team with Wales and players like David Brooks who are out injured, give them a chance to come back and get some first team football under the belt before the tournament?
Well, I hope so. If everything goes to plan, then you hope so, because I've got young players who will be a year older, year more experience, but you don't know where they're going to be at this time next year. We had one of our big players, Joe Allen, who we're going to miss this summer. Hopefully he'll be fit next year. I'm sure he will. But we were all geared up for this summer, and we had the momentum as well, unbeaten in 6, and there was a real feel-good So you can look at the negatives, you can look at the positives. If everything goes to plan, then it probably will be a positive, because we have got so many young players coming through. Some who haven't played many games because they were on loan. Hopefully they can cement a place at their own clubs, or they go on a better loan somewhere else and they get more games. So, yeah, only time will tell, but hopefully we will be in a better state than we are at the moment, which, we're saying a lot because we're in a good moment at the moment. But, for example, Nico Williams, who's playing for Liverpool, he's never been in my squad. So, a player like that, where's he in, another year? Is he playing regular for Liverpool? Does he go out on loan? So there's all ifs and buts, and yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, if we come outside your management and your coaching side after retirement, you've obviously gone into co-ownership of Salford City. How's your experience been so far? Obviously, they've been very successful in the few years you've been there.
Oh, it's been amazing. It's been such a thrill, such a ride. Me and Gary sort of discussed a lot when we were playing what we were going to do afterwards. And obviously we got into business together and we did our coaching badges together. But we wanted something that, the class of 92, we could all be a part of in 20, 25, 30 years. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is if you're in charge, you own a club, because you're not going to be a manager for, sometimes a year, 2 years, or a coach. That can chop and change all the time. But, we have a real chance of moulding something that was obviously close to our hearts because it's in the middle of Salford. And, yeah, trying to achieve something, which, we already have because of what we've done and the promotions that we've got, and the state of the club, and the jobs that we've give in the area. So, but we want to achieve more. So it's amazing, and let's see where we are in 10 years, because it's also a chance for us all to get together. And that's not just us as well. It's Chris Casper, who works at the club, who was part of our youth team, and regularly see each other, go to games, have meetings. So yeah, it's a good way of staying in touch also.
Yeah, you touched on it there about the 10 years. I think we've got Gary coming on soon, so it'll be interesting comparing what you and Gary say to this question. Where do you see Salford being in 10 years?
Well, just don't know. I mean, hopefully...
On the spot.
Yeah. Self-sustainable would be good. In regards to, we're getting regular crowds, we're at a high level, so we're getting good TV money, we're getting good sponsorship money, and we've had players potentially come through the system. So we've had players who we've moulded coming through Salford City, and just a team that the city can be proud of. Now, whether that's in League 2, League 1, the Championship, the Premier League, who knows? And that's what's exciting. We don't know, but we're ambitious. We want to be the best. We want to be competitive, but as we've found, it's not easy.
Yeah, well, I think that wraps it up nicely. Just want to say thank you, Ryan, for joining us today.
Great, enjoyed it. Cheers, guys.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. Take care.
Perfect.